Okay, capes part 1. The first thing we're going to do with our capes is we're going to put our ballpoint needle into our machine. So you've each been given one of these. It's on a piece of green felt. Normally they come in this little case that like has a crease in the back, so it just pops open and you can slide your needle right out. It's really important to keep them straight, or like know the difference between your needles. So if you take it out of a ballpoint, a yellow ballpoint, it says ballpoint right there for easy reference for storage. If you take it out of a ballpoint container, put it in a ballpoint container. If you take it out of a universal or woven needle, put it in this, put it right back in here, or throw it away if it's broken or you're done using it. Some of the fancier brands have color coding on them for how heavy weight the needle is and whether it's for woven or ballpoint fabrics. Okay, to take my needle out, I turn this screw and then that allows me to pull my needle out. Okay, and then I take my new needle. There's a flat side, you'll see, I don't know if you can see in the video. Anyway, you'll be able to see in person there's a flat side and a round side. The flat side goes to the back of my machine, and I hold it up with my finger while I tighten it, just enough to grab it. And then I tighten it the rest of the way with either my fingers, which I find strong enough to hold. If it's not holding strong enough with your fingers, you will need to find a teeny tiny screwdriver, because this is a screw, to hold it in place. Okay, once I've changed my needle out, I can sew my fabric. Now, I can sew the hood lining before you do this step, if you want. You don't have to. This ballpoint needle will sew woven fabric. It's not the end of the world as far as, because you'll notice that for our hoods, there are two types of fabric. There's a lining, which I don't have handy. Yeah, I do right here. Okay. I have the outer fabric, which is a knit, and I have the inner fabric, which is a woven cotton print. Okay. So what I did with both of these already is I measured them, and I've sewn them. So let me get up here. You'll see the pictures online of the rectangles, and the size that you need to cut them will be on there. I don't want to say something in the video that's wrong because I can't remember off the top of my head what I cut these out as. Okay, but both of them are, I left my hood rectangle a little longer, partly out of laziness and partly because I know I can just trim it later. So it's up to you. If you'd like to trim them the same, that's fine. If you're worried about your hood being too small, definitely leave this bigger, because that'll give you more space later, versus if they're the same and you make one short, if it ends up shorter, this starts making your hood shorter. So you have two rectangles of fabric with this one seam in them. Okay, so my lining was sewn the same way. There's a seam right here. Both of them were sewn with right sides together. So this is the right side of my knit fabric, and this one right here is the right side of my hood fabric. This is the wrong side. So right now my hood is basically wrong ways out. Okay, I put the right sides together within each other. Okay, so because I want to show you how I'm going to sew these together. So I lined up, I'm going to have to reline up these two tips. And you'll see this one has a smooth seam, and it's lining up with a smooth seam on this side. I'd put a pin here. Okay, and I'd pin all the way down this side. Because what I want to do is make these two pieces into one hood. So I'm going to start here and sew all along this edge and then down the other side. Okay? And then I will turn it right side out, leaving with the two sides together. Okay? So I'm going to sew that and come back to you guys. Okay, one quick note. I'm about to sew these two fabrics together. These are two different types of fabrics, and they're gonna not, it's possible to put them together just fine. But what you're gonna find is that this bottom one is slippery and stretches. So go slow. Be careful that you're not pulling too much on this bottom one, because it will make it uneven all the way around by the very end. Okay, so we're going to just go slow. We're going to let the machine do its thing. I'm going to make sure I have my machine on the correct settings, because right now I'm on zigzag stitch still. So I'm going to move it to about almost a 3 length, and the width doesn't matter because we're on a straight stitch. And we're going to go ahead and stitch a 1/4 inch seam all the way around the hood. Okay, if you notice that it starts to gather, that's a problem. Potentially try turning it over and sewing so that your white is down. Okay? Also, you might need to check your tension in your machine. Sometimes, because we went from embroidering, we went from the zigzag stitch with the embroidery hearts. Sometimes that throws the tension off. So re-thread your machine, like take the thread all the way out, put it back in, and then adjust your stitches, grab some scraps, try it again on the scraps, and see if that helps. You could also make your stitches longer or shorter. Sometimes the longer stitches, the stretchy fabric thinks that you want it to like spring back. The longer the stitch, the more roughly it thinks that it wants you to make it. It thinks that's what you're trying to do. So check your stitch length, check your tension, re-thread. If you're still and turn it over to put the woven underneath. See if those fix any of the problems you're having. Otherwise, just call me and we'll troubleshoot it. Okay? So I'm going to sew all this around, and then you'll see the finished hood in part 2.